Welcome everyone to the Eve Growing Concepts. Today's video we're going to be talking about composting rolls and composting balls. And notice in these buckets that there is nothing that is off limits. It's all about presentation. And the beauty about vermiculture, as this vermiculture book talks about, it greatly reduces pathogens in like manner that hot composting does and even cold composting does. Now as this video plays out, I'm going to kind of narrate as I see the picture, so if it's a little off, excuse me for that. But basically what I do is I get all of this organics and I put it in a bucket and I chop it up fine with a flat-ended spade. And the liquid, of course, as many of you who follow my YouTube channel, that liquid goes to our carbon-based composting bin, our CBCB, which is a great composting method to turn your outside leaves into a great soil base. And basically this is duff, Diterius under forest floor. So easy to make, and this is the byproduct of my carbon-based composting bin. This is leaf mold, or humus as some people call it. And this pile right here is 10 to 11 months old. And I could put it in my grow towers as it is, but since I'm going to be using it as a duff, as bedding for my worm farm, I'm going to break it all up using a screen, a 1/4 inch galvanized screen. And I have to be very careful because this is packed with red wigglers, there's some Alabama jumpers in here, and there is some Canadian night crawlers in here. So when I pass it through the screen, I want to make sure I don't hurt any of these creatures, right? And that's basically how I make my duff. And when I'm done with it at the screen, it looks just like this. Look at how nice and rich that looks. This is my soil base. I add my castings with some lime and I'm growing some food. Anybody can have a green thumb. When somebody says they don't have a green thumb, they're missing the mark, because everybody can grow healthy organic food for themselves, family, and friends. And I think we all need to know we got to do that. So basically I mix some of this duff into the food. You don't have to. You could just use the minced organics into a composting roll and bury them as is. And we'll show, as this video goes, I'll show you where I bury them. And it's a great way to compost, where you don't have to necessarily do the traditional way of composting. We have to worry about your carbon and nitrogen. With this minced compost, you can roll it up into a ball, as I'm doing right here, or you can roll it up into a carbon, newspaper, paper bag, even cotton t-shirts, 100% cotton t-shirts. Roll that organics in, and what you're doing is you're stopping all this organic from going, besides growing food for yourself, you're stopping this organics from going to the landfill, where it's just wasted and joined together with a bunch of plastics and other stuff. We all know what the landfill is all about. We need to stop this practice. All this organics that is coming our way is the biodiversity lost in our commercial farming. And I'll put a link below to the video, A Need to Grow. This right here is just a chicken bone. I throw that in there. Everything, nothing is off limits. All is sacred, nothing wasted. And so I just pack that into the ball, and I'll bury these throughout my yard, in my grow towers, in my worm beds, and Mother Nature will take care of this and help turn it into soil. All this biodiversity that's already in my soil will turn this organics into great soil amendments, so we can start growing food. And if you age them, notice this white mold that's on top of here. You age them, you put them in an aerated bucket, a Vernmenting bucket, and bury these rolls directly into your worm farms. So sometimes I do age them. Right now I'm making composting rolls. Very easy. You take your minced compost, little duff. Again, you don't have to use the duff you don't want to. You can bury them just like that into wherever you're going to bury them. So think of all this organics that I'm stopping from going to the landfill, and all the energy we're saving. We'd have less big trucks coming and picking up the stuff, and so less carbon emitted. So it's a win-win situation. Right now I'm in my worm farm, outside one. This temperature has been in the active composting zone for a long time. You'll notice all the little toads that hatched in my natural swimming pool. We'll do some videos on that as well. Thousands of little toads I had to, that when you turn your pool alive and not kill it with all the chlorine. You just see all kinds of life. And a toad happened to go into my pool and had all kinds of little tadpoles. And these little toads, once they're done the tadpole stage, they don't need to be in the water anymore. So I had to get all these guys out of my pool. Many of them I put through my yard, and look at them all. And these now, I don't want them in this worm farm. I don't have any in there now. I've made a little ramp for them to go out, so now they're out in the yard on their own in the wild. So hopefully many of them will make it. But it was just an interesting experience. And so this is my outside worm farm, and I try to keep it in the active zone, and I'm hoping I can make it through the winter with high heats. What I'll do is I'll bury some of these composting rolls. You can create them where they make heat if you pack them right. And we'll talk more about that in another video. But if you pack these composting rolls where they heat up, it could get you through the winter. And this little worm farm I have right here is just packed with red wigglers. I have some Alabama jumpers moving around there, I think. And so now I'm going to bury them in my yard. Let's say you don't have a garden and you still want to compost. Get yourself an iron awl, dig an easy hole, and bury it. And you have to bury it kind of deep if you have a dog in your yard that might sniff it up and dig it up. I've had that happen sometimes. So great for your towers. When your tower is done for the season and you want to not take it apart and use it for next season, bury a bunch of composting rolls within this tower. This is going to feed, these composting rolls are going to feed the red wigglers and the other biodiversity, and they will feed the soil and make it rich for next spring. So sometimes I've buried many composting rolls within these towers, and these towers, if you notice, it's very hard for an animal to get through there to get at these composting rolls or even smell it, because the number one rule when you're dealing with nitrogens or with the greens is you got to bury it so you don't smell it. So when you're dealing with stuff like that, you bury it deep and the animals can't smell it. So this is my pumpkin patch that I'll be burying it. Notice in this pumpkin patch here, if you notice closely, there's just so many of these Alabama jumpers. You know, I know, again, we've talked about this, that they're invasive creatures as far as being in the woods, but I have a feeling they're very advantageous when you have them in your garden. And so mine is just, every time I lift up these leaves, I see tons of Alabama jumpers. And my kale did so well in this tower, and I buried this composting roll. Again, this feeds the red wigglers within, and the red wigglers, of course, create their garden gold, and they spread it within the tower. And these red wigglers, of course, when you grow vertically using soil, they are aerating and creating great drainage. So the red wigglers are doing all the work, right? Feed the red, and they will do the rest. Now here, I've done videos on this recently. I just uploaded one. So these composting rolls can be buried anywhere and everywhere. You got flower beds, bury that compost right in there like this, and it's just a great way to get rid of massive amounts of organics, stopping it from going to the landfill, reclaiming this precious organics, this biodiversity that's lost in our commercial farming. We've taken full control of it, and we are growing food with it. It's a closed loop system, right? It's permaculture at its best. And we're going to be talking more about composting rolls and composting balls and the advantages of it all. And this is why, one key reason why growing vertically using soil is far better than soilless growing, because we haven't lost the art of composting. All right, so that's basically it. We'll do more on composting rolls and composting balls. I hope this video was informative. If you like it, please subscribe, and we'll literally grow up together. That's all I have to say. God bless. Over and out.